Dobrý večer v kempu, vážení diváci. Vítám vás v Centru architektury a městského plánování. Vítám vás na další přednášce ze série Urban Talks. Dnes se budeme bavit o konceptu 15-minutového města. Máme tu vzácného hosta, Carlose Morena, který se jako vědec na pařížské Sorboně zabývá komplexními systémy, což města bez pochyby jsou. Je taky poradcem pařížské starostky Anne Hidalgo a díky němu se z Paříže, z dříve autocentrického města, stává město, které by mělo v okruhu 15 minut poskytovat to nejdůležitější. Mělo by vás uspokojit dostatečně na to, abyste svůj pracovní týden, volný čas zvládli v okruhu 15 minut. 15 minut pěšky, 15 minut například na kole. My se dnes seznámíme s tím konceptem do hloubky díky jeho přednášce. Budete mít možnost pokládat dotazy, použijte proto platformu slido.com a pod hashtagem Campuj online se dostanete do chatovací místnosti, kde já vaše dotazy uvidím. Vítám tady dneska taky pana primátora hlavního města Prahy Zdeňka Hřiba. Dobrý den, pane primátore, a jeho prvního náměstka Petra Hlaváčka. Pane primátore, já vás teďka pozvu k nějakému úvodnímu slovu, dám vám prostor a potom pozvu taky pana Hlaváčka. Takže vítejte v kempu a prosím.
Děkuji. Můžete česky, nebo mám anglicky, nebo bude se to překládat? Pan profesor mi bude rozumět? Jo, dobře, tak já to možná zkusím tedy česky. Tak vážené dámy, vážení pánové, já vás tady vítám u tady této výjimečné příležitosti, kdy můžeme diskutovat o tomto velice aktuálním tématu 15-minutového města nebo města krátkých vzdáleností s tak renomovaným expertem, jako je profesor Carlos Moreno. Co se týče toho konceptu, tak my se samozřejmě snažíme jím řídit, snažíme se ho aplikovat, snažíme se ho zahrnout do těch plánů, které máme na rozvoj města, jako je třeba i klimatický plán, protože 15-minutové město je koncept, který z mého pohledu je klíčový pro řešení dvou velice důležitých problémů v podstatě každého města moderního v dnešní době, a to je tedy zásadní otázka související s ekologií města a za druhé záležitost související s dopravou v tom městě. A vlastně ten koncept 15-minutového města obsahuje odpověď na to, jak to řešit, jak redukovat ty emise, jak se snáze dopravovat po městě, a kromě toho to má samozřejmě spoustu dalších výhod. Třeba to, že teda lidi by potom mohli být zdravější, protože ten pohyb pěšky podporuje zdraví a nepochybně to podporuje i ty místní komunity. A to všechno vlastně vede tedy k rozvoji toho multicentrického města, což je jeden ze zásadních problémů Prahy, protože Praha je velmi, řekl bych, monocentrická. Pokud někam cestujete, tak je obvyklé, že cestujete třeba přes centrum. Ta Praha je vlastně postavená kolem toho centra, což rozhodně do budoucna bude nutné změnit, tak aby jsme ulevili tomu historickému centru. Takže tady máme jedinečnou příležitost. Máme pana profesora tady. Pan profesor tedy pomohl rozvinout ten koncept 15-minutového města, pomáhá i s implementací v zahraničí, teda například v té Paříži. To je, myslím si, pro nás velká příležitost. My teď budeme mít tady v druhé půlce roku to EU předsednictví. Pochopitelně hlavní město bude klíčovým účastníkem těch akcí, některé budeme i sami pořádat, a pochopitelně vnímáme i Paříž jako aktuálně tedy hlavní město toho státu, který teď má to EU předsednictví, což je tedy Francie. To znamená, že určitě to bude i příležitost v těch eventech, které budeme pořádat, předání toho žezla pomyslného, toho EU předsednictví mezi těmi hlavními městy, tak určitě to bude příležitost sdílet i ty poznatky o tady tomto konceptu, a věřím, že to bude velmi, velmi inspirativní právě v téhle oblasti. Takže děkuji a děkuji za pozornost a doufám, že s panem profesorem budeme mít možnost spolupracovat s ním a s jeho týmem v budoucnosti. Děkuji.
Mnohokrát děkuji za úvodní slovo a teď už poprosím prvního náměstka primátora Petra Hlaváčka, který má právě v gesci rozvoj městských částí a revitalizace brownfieldů, kde město krátkých vzdáleností je také aktuální otázkou.
Děkuji moc za slovo. Nebudu mluvit dlouho, že se všichni těšíte na Carlose Morenu, který měl už jednou přijet, ale přebíral významnou cenu, takže tenkrát nedorazil. A chtěl jsem jenom vzpomenout, jak se města proměňují z mé vlastní zkušenosti. Já jsem tady kousíček odsud prožíval dětství na Masarykově nábřeží, dříve nábřeží Klementa Gottwalda, předtím Reinharda Heydricha. Vidíte, jak se to město proměňuje nejenom ve funkci, ale ve jménech. A žil jsem v tom krátkém městě. Když jsem šel do první třídy v roce 67, tak jsem šel za roh, to nebylo ani 3 minuty, do Vojtěžské ulice. Pro žervé babičce jsem chodil do Myslíkovy ulice, tátovi pro BTčka, to byla zkrátka Bulgar tabak. Já jsem chodil na Struze do takového malého tabáku a v tatínkové chodili na pivo u zpěváčků na Struze. Takže přes den jsme byli po škole na Žofíně a když jsem měl jít domů, tak babička vyvěsila za okno trenýrky jako znamení, že mám jít domů. Vůbec nikoho nenapadlo mě převádět přes ulici. A myslím, že jednu holčičku vozili autem z nějaké významné rodiny do školy. Takže to byl rok 67 a to město se postupně proměňovalo a potřebujeme nějaký čas, aby se proměnilo zase nazpátek. Takže děkuju a moc se těším na přednášku.
Výborně. Děkuji, že jste to zmínil. Pan Carlos Moreno tu skutečně měl být během konference, kterou pořádal spolek Pěšky městem, což je organizace, se kterou Institut plánování už se spolupracuje na spoustě projektech právě, nebo chtěl by, právě z toho důvodu, že jsou velmi důležité, že přibližují to město lidem, vracejí městu to lidské měřítko. Vznikají díky nim školní ulice, bezpečné přechody a podobně. A to je právě ten aspekt, kterým se vracíme do toho lidského města, kde trošku bojujeme proti tomu, že jsme si ta města postavili hlavně pro auta. Což samozřejmě je výdobytek doby, který nám nesmírně pomohl, ale ve spoustě věcech nám život stěžuje. Znovu připomenu, že tady můžete pokládat dotazy, but now let me switch to English and I will ask you for a warm welcome from Mr. Carlos Moreno, Sorbonne professor and advisor of Paris mayor and author of Koncept, 15-minute city. Welcome to camp.
Do you have the timer? The timer. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, the Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Petra, for this kind invitation. Really, I am very, very happy to be here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. I said to the Mayor a few minutes that the first time when I visited Prague, I was 23 years old. And today, I am 62, and I am a real pleasure in all circumstances to visit Prague, to work, to meet different friends, very, very good friends, colleagues, and others. Of course, this is a real honor for me to be here for delivering this masterclass on proximities and to share with you my academic research and with my team at Sorbonne University, with my entrepreneurship territory and innovation share. I have different pictures for illustrating this concept. In reality, the 15-minute city has become a very popular concept around the world. But our research work is based in the global vision for anticipating the urban and territorial mutations, in particular with the global warming and the different necessary transformation of our urban life. And we wanted to develop this idea that we need to reinvent new relationship between each one of us, citizen dwellers, and our space, our time, our daily urban space, and our daily useful time. Reinvent proximities is, in fact, the motto for this concept, the 15-minute city. In reality, the first time when I proposed this concept was during the COP21 in Paris, at the moment of this strong negotiation between states for signing this deal agreement. And my mayor, Ms. Anne Hidalgo, a really powerful woman, a really visionary mayor, convoked at this moment the summit, the global summit of mayors for climate change. At this moment, Anne Hidalgo was to the chairwoman of the C40 cities, the global network of metropolises for fighting against climate change. And I said to Anne Hidalgo at this moment, in 2015, that the real question for each one of governance is to define a roadmap in our state nation, of course, but however, in our cities, in our territories, what is the trajectory for living in cities, because cities are the most significant contributors of CO2 emissions. And in reality, the question is not, at this moment it wasn't, to define the technical measures for having less CO2 emissions, but to decide in reality in what kind of city do we want to live in. And today, currently, 6 years after the Paris Agreement, we need to give a response, a powerful response for defining in what kind of city do we want to live in. Because there are a lot of kinds of cities. There are around the world, today, a majority of world population is the urban population. We live in cities. This is the case of Prague. This is the case of Paris. From certain thousand years of existence, and we have been developing several transformations because the human activity in reality is more and more concentrated in cities. Cities are the most important organizations for consuming energy. But at the same time, cities are the most important generators of wealth and poverty. We need today to understand that the 50-minute concept is very popular because we wanted to respond to this question in what kind of city we want to live in under a triple way. The ecological way, because we need today to fight against climate change. This is not only a question of global warming. This is today a question of climate emergency. 1 week ago, on Monday, April 4th, the IPCC, the International Group of Experts for Climate, published the latest report, Climate Change, Climate Adaptation, and Climate Mitigation. And this report said we have only 3 years for defining radically an ambitious roadmap for reducing at least of 50% our CO2 emissions in the next decade, in this decade, until 2030, and to reduce at least of 60% at the horizon 2040, and to reach the carbon neutrality at the horizon 2050. This is a question today for defining our capability of humanity for surviving at the end of this century. We need today, we don't have another choice to transform radically our lifestyles for reducing our CO2 emissions. But this is not enough. We need to transform our economic relationships, and we need to transform our social relationships in cities, because cities are the most important, most significant places for humanity today. If the 50-minute city concept today has become popular, is because we wanted to propose a new revolution based on proximities. We need to redefine our relationships, our daily relationships between cities and dwellers, the compact spaces, the hyper-concentrated cities, and to redefine as well the relation with our different territories. The relations between cities and territory is totally necessary, because we need today to develop here and now the very concrete and ambitious transformations. My friend, the mayor of Milano, Giuseppe Sala, embraced the 50-minute city concept during the lockdown in March 2020, when our humanity was constrained to be blocked in our daily activities. Giuseppe Sala is one of the leaders of the international global movement on 50-minute city. And for example, this is a concrete transformation of Milano. This is Piazza Loretta, before and now, based on this idea to develop the new centralities. Mr. Mayor of Prague said a few minutes ago that we need in Prague, for example, transform this city for developing new centralities. Of course, the concept of 50 minutes is based on this idea that for a long time we have been living with the segmented city, specialized city, with a very strong, very uncomfortable, long commute for 2 hours, even 3 hours for a round trip, because the modern characteristic of the urbanism was this artificial separation between activities, in particular for going from my home to my office or to my job daily days. It is possible today to transform if we have decided to embrace a new paradigm. We consider that this paradigm, it is possible to be implemented in all kinds of cities. The 50-minute city is not only oriented for big metropolises, big cities, hyper concentrated cities. We consider that regardless of the different contexts, the different social, economical, cultural contexts, regardless of the density of each one of cities, it is possible to implement a new roadmap based on this strong concept, a massive decentralization, to develop a massive polycentrism, to develop the new relationship for creating added value in the triple impact, ecological, economical, and social. In all cities, including in Prague, we could observe the transformation from centuries until now. And we have this possibility, including to use digital technologies, for using science, for using mathematics, for using statistics, for using digital algorithms, for imagine, for formulating new hypotheses in order to identify the axis for developing these radical transformations. In reality, I think that we need to examine this concept of sustainability, because in all places, of course, we are totally okay with this idea. We need to have sustainable cities, sustainable territories, sustainable organizations. But in reality, if we wanted to give a correct response at this question in what kind of city do we want to live, we need to deep this concept of sustainability. My colleague, the president of the honorary president of my scientific council at my chair at Sorbonne University, the Nobel Prize Mohamed Yunus professor, wrote a wonderful book, The Triple Zero: zero carbon, zero poverty, zero exclusion. And in reality, a city, a territory based on a real, a powerful sustainability should develop a radical urban or territorial policy for be at the same time with this triple impact: ecological, economical, and social, for being livable, viable, and equitable. We need today to consider that each one of euros invested in our cities should be a return of investment based on one third: ecological, economical, and social impact. In reality, the strong attractivity of our cities and territory is not only the economical resources. The real attractivity of cities is our capability for offering in each one of square meters of our cities. I want to maximize this idea, to offer this triple impact with the triple return of investment: ecological, economical, and social. We need to have these three convergent actions if we wanted to develop a new attractivity. This is one of the questions in Prague, for example, about the tourism. This is the same question in Barcelona, because tourism in Barcelona and in Prague, it is a very important source of revenues. But we need to explore what is the return of investment in the ecological way, in the social way, if we have an historical center totally dedicated for Airbnb, only for hosting tourists, and what is the situation for people that we should live in the center. And now the evidence is that it is not possible because of the Airbnb is today the vector for this disparition of several mayors, several friends, several colleagues around the world said to me, "Okay, Carlos, because I need economical resources for my city, and tourism is a very interesting sector for having revenues, but at the same time, I have been developing a very powerful network for the mass transportations. I am very happy in Prague with the metro, with the buses network, etc. And I said to my friends around the world, I went to Buenos Aires 2 months ago, and I discussed with my friend, the mayor of Buenos Aires, Horacio Larreta, the vice president of C40 Cities, one of the leaders in South America for developing and implementing the C40 Cities. And Horacio, of course, is very proud of this development of infrastructures for protected bike lanes in Buenos Aires, 500 kilometers in this city, 10 million of inhabitants, the half of population of the Argentina. And of course, I said to Horacio, congratulations, and his team, this is very interesting way to redefine the priority of the mass transportation. Of course, we need today to reverse the paradigm for giving the high priority for having a mobility with the less CO2 emissions. This is the case for walking, for having bikeability, for having mass transportation, buses, tramways, underground, and of course to give the less priority to individual cars, of course. But I said to Horacio Larreta, I said to different mayors around the world, for a long time, including for soft mobilities, including for mobilities with a less CO2 emissions, we have a trend to confuse objectives and means. I said that mobility, an individual car, a taxi, pool sharing, car sharing, bikes, are in fact means. And in reality, the quality of life is our goal, is our target. Our target is not to have an international competition for having more and more and more bikeability in cities. I said to my colleagues, I am very happy to have bikeability in a city. However, if I need to spend 1 hour with my bike instead of 1 hour or 45 minutes with my individual car, my quality of life is not at the high level. Because 1 hour in a bike is 1 hour without an useful time for living my individual life, my sociability, for developing other activities. We need, in fact, to break this paradigm based on distances, long commute, regardless of the kind of mobility used. Our goal in all circumstances is to increase the quality of life. This is not only to implement infrastructures for having certain kinds of mobility. In my research with my team at Sorbonne University, we consider, I said 1 hour ago with the team, the Prague team, I said that in our point of view, the mobility as a result of the presence or absence, the essential urban or territorial social functions for satisfying my quality of life. And in reality, the starting point, 1 decade ago, 10 years ago, when I built the first draft of the 15-minute city, was how could we define the high quality of life in urban or in territories? And with my team, we have been developing a new model based on the knowledge of our urban or territorial lifestyle. The scientific name, this is the ontologic model, ontologic knowledge 3. How could we define the points for consider what are the essential social functions for being happy anywhere, in order to propose the different uses, services, and infrastructures necessary for that. And in fact, several people thought that my contribution is the number 15. And I have several questions about what is the difference of 10 minutes, what is the difference with 5 minutes, what is the difference with 38 minutes. This is not the problem. This is just a metric. And 15, this is not necessarily by home, this is not necessarily so far, all kind of, Andy Warhol said, if one of us will be the glorious period with 15 minutes. No, the real question with my scientific contribution is how could you define an urban and territorial quality of life if each one of us is anywhere? What are the essential functions for be happy? And our ontologic model has defined this social circularity. And this social circularity, this is the first time when scientist was proposed in 2016, just after the COP21, because I said to the mayor, Anne Hidalgo, Anne, the COP21 is a real success because we have signed the Paris Agreement. But in reality, the decisions took by the Paris Agreement, this is a very impressive resume of the technical solutions. But in reality, the most relevant contributor of CO2 emissions are cities. And we needed to understand why cities are contributors. The first sector in cities for contributing of CO2 emissions is mobility. The second sector is the building. And we needed to consider what kind of mobility we have used and how could we use each one of building already that exist. And I said to Anne Hidalgo, we needed to reinvent our urban lifestyle. We need to reinvent our territorial lifestyles. We need to propose a new paradigm for living differently, regardless of the size of the city, regardless of the density of the city, regardless of our capability for exploring our territories, if we have the possibility for identifying exactly the essential functions for being happy. And with a very strong work between scientists and the different territories in France and in different other places, we have proposed this new urban and territorial mindset, the social circularity. We need to remember this social circularity. And we have in these pictures the big picture of the happy proximities. The happy proximities is in fact our capability for accessing anywhere to 6 essential urban functions. To live in the good condition, the name is the organic density, because during several years we have confused density with promiscuity. We need to define this organic density to have housing in a good condition with the correct material condition for living. The second one is to work without long commute. I said in 2016 we needed to transform our work style. The work style is the first source of the degradation of our quality of life, because each one of us spent at least 2 or 3 hours daily only for going from my home to my office, vice versa. This is not possible because we have spent our useful time and we have reduced our quality of life. The third point is to supply. This is not possible to continue to shop in the big centers in the unhuman conditions, in the big mall for going with a diesel car for 30 kilometers, for buying for 2 weeks, etc. We needed to reinstall the supply chains. We need to create local commerce, to recreate local jobs, to recreate short circuits, to cancel intermediations for having a more healthy string of supply. The fourth point, the medical services, to take care of our health and mental and physical health in proximity as well, to prevent, to follow the condition of each one of us. The first point, to access to culture, to learn, education, culture. And the sixth point, to enjoy in my city, to reconquer public spaces, to have an air and water without pollution, to have the possibility for working in my proximity, for kids to take the public space for living outdoor, and for elderly people to have in the good condition as well. In reality, this is the core of our proposal based on happy proximities. I said, if each one of us has the possibility to access within a short perimeter in the compact zone, 15 minutes, and in the middle and low density zones, I said 30 minutes, and of course, in the very low densities, including the middle densities, we need to integrate vehicles for having a commute based on, of course, electrical vehicles and the new on-demand transport, car sharing, etc. This is in reality our work when we have a link with different cities around the world. We needed to explore each one of cities. In reality, our work with different cities is to explore each one of our square meters for identify what is the balance between the 6 urban social functions. If we have the possibility to maximize the access to the 6 urban social functions or territorial urban functions in the good condition, with the physical presence or using new technologies, digital technologies, we have the possibility to transforming the quality of life of our cities. And in this way, we have convinced that the roadmap of the happy proximities, 15-minute city, 30 minutes territory, based on this happy proximity, for implementing this social circularity, automatically will have the possibility to transform the business model of cities. Of course, this transformation, this is not a magic wand. I said to different mayors, I said to different stakeholders, I said to different people committed in these transformations. During several decades after the Second War, after the petroleum, the fossil era, we have accepted to live in unacceptable conditions. This is the sad reality, because we have accepted to live in mineral cities. We have accepted to be in the traffic jams. Even in the poor condition, the mass transportation, we have totally committed for going in these human mall centers. Climate change is in reality for a long time. The first moment with the humanity said we need to transform our lifestyle for resisting to climate change was 40 years ago with the Kyoto Protocol, 40 years ago. And now the IPCC said 1 week ago, we have only 3 years for defining a radical roadmap for transforming our CO2 emissions if we wanted to limit the increase of temperatures under 2 degrees. It's a failure for humanity because we should limit the increase of temperature of the under 1.5. And today, this is irreversible. This is impossible to reach this. In all circumstances, in spite of our efforts, we will have in the next years, in this decade, several locations in the world that will be disappear with the livability condition. This is today a reality. You could read today the news in South Africa, for example. We have in this moment the several impressive floods. I went to Argentina 2 months ago. This is the summer season. And in Buenos Aires, they don't have water. The Paraná, the second river of the South America, half dry, because we have accepted to live in unacceptable conditions, and we are contributors for this dramatic situation, available in all continents, in all cities. Given that, I proposed to the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, at the end of November 2018, I proposed to Anne Hidalgo, and we needed to propose a new roadmap for cities, for changing radically not only our CO2 emissions, because we have confused means and objectives, means and goals. Our goal is to increase the quality of life, at the same time to reduce our CO2 emissions. Our goal is not to imagine the new technological solutions for developing a big sequestration of CO2. We need to go at the root of the sources of this generation of CO2. This is the roadmap that I proposed to Anne Hidalgo, an ambitious roadmap for proposing a new paradigm based on the polycentrism, for having multiple and new centralities, for developing the triple impact, ecological, economical, and social, and to develop more interactions for enhancing the social life, the urban social life, the territorial, and to build together a real inclusive transformation. In reality, this is the core of our project. Shorter distances, this is not a goal. The goal is to have a decentralized urban life for having the access to the social circularity based on the 6 essential urban and territorial functions: to live, to work, to supply, to care, to learn, and to enjoy. If each one of us has the possibility to access within a short perimeter to the 6 essential urban functions to maximize, we are very happy. We don't need the smart citizens with the smart technology. We need, before all, happy citizens in a happy life with a peaceful life. And this ambitious project is in reality our proposal, regardless of the density, in big metropolises, in hyper regions, this is the case in China, in small cities, in rurality, to offer to citizens local services to improve their quality of life. We need to put human at the center of our different proposals. For that, we need to develop this new narrative. We need to propose to our citizen dwellers, to inhabitants, to shift the mindset. We need to develop a new urban culture. And in fact, for each one of us, this is the main obstacle. We have a real difficulty for sharing with inhabitants that we need to change our paradigm. In a city as Paris, we have decided to close the motor highway along the Seine River for going from the east to west. We need to breathe. We need to give this possibility to have a Seine River with a urban park. And we have a very, very radical opposition for citizens that they wasn't to change their daily behavior with their individual cars. 4 years with the tribunal, judges, etc., for having today one of the most significant urban parks in the world. 4 years, only for that. In fact, we need to shift our mindset. We need to offer to citizen dwellers the new ways for integrating this global movement. And I said, yes, we can. This is possible, but this is a long journey. The 15-minute city, the 30-minute territory, our vision based on this multicentrism. This is not a magic wand. This is not a magic wand. I don't have the possibility for solving several structural problems based on productivism, for example, because productivism is one of the most significant reasons for having this hectic life based on production, consumption, and this permanent course for having money for buying unusual things. But I said this is a trajectory, this is a roadmap, this is a path. And we need, in particular for mayors, to have to stay in the way. Even if we have the elections, this is a real chance for living in a democratic system, and we need, in fact, even if you have the changes in different local elections, for example, we need to stay in this course for developing this new paradigm in this continuity. Our cities, until now, have existed based on this segmented organization, based on the historical center, administrative center, in the modernity with the corporate district, in the economy of services based on corporate and luxury towers, and at the same time with several social fractures, the poor, the worker districts, the poor districts, etc., etc. And this era is based on 3 lobbies: the lobby of vehicles, the lobby of fossil energy, and the lobby of cement. We needed to reinverse the priority for shaping our cities, because during 70 years, our cities, in fact, were shaped by the convergence of 3 lobbies: fossil energies, vehicles, and cement. And we needed today to show that this is possible. I have this chance to visit worldwide, and of course, there are lot of examples that it is possible to implement a new paradigm. And today, my target with my team is to develop around the world a global movement, a global initiative for transforming our cities, and to take again this idea of James Jacobs, because this is not totally a new idea. My scientific contribution is, in fact, the social circularity based on this ontologic model. But we could read again different scientists, activists. James Jacobs said, with the living cities. James Jacobs said, a livable city, a vibrant city, is a city where we have the multiplicity of choice. And this is, in reality, the golden rule of happy proximities. This is the golden rule of polycentrismo. This is the golden rule of 15-minute city, 30-minute territory. The possibility to have a choice. Our answer is we need to have a multiplicity of choice for each one of 6 essential urban functions: to live, to work, to supply, to care, to educate, and to enjoy. If I have the multiplicity of choice, this is a great victory for citizen dwellers. For that, we needed to transform our urban and territorial framework. And for that, we needed to propose the new relationship between the urban spaces and the time. And in this way, this model of the triple convergence of sustainability has become totally coherent. Because in reality, the city of proximities is the embodiment of sustainability for offering in each one of our proximities an ecological positive attitude based on the reduction of our mobility's constraint for reducing our CO2 emission by walkability and bikeability. At the same time, to implement the local jobs, to implement the local commerce, to implement services in proximities, and to generate a positive social impact, in particular, because we have this possibility for reconquering public spaces, for transforming public spaces, for peaceful street, green street, and to have more and more social and cultural activities. The city of proximities in reality is based on this idea that this one of proximities is the possibility for having a useful time. And the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, in fact, is a real proof that if we have this policy for reducing our constraint mobility, as a result, is to have more and more useful time for living differently. In reality, the 15-minute city, this is a new relationship between the urban and territorial space with the useful time. We need to reinvent this notion of time. I suggested you to read the philosopher, the German philosopher Hartmut Rosa. This is the history of the useful time. The latest book is Acceleration. We needed to reconsider our relation of the time. For the ancient Greeks, the time was composed of 3 different elements. The first one, chronos. This is just the clock of the time. But the second time was the kairos. The kairos is the time for be creative, for be innovative, for be imaginative. And the first time of the ancient Greeks was the aion. The aion is the time for my personal relationship, myself, in the cosmos, regardless of the religion. This is the time in the ancient Greeks. Chronos, kairos, and aion. In the modern times, you could read the historian of technologies, Lewis Mumford. He said, the Industrial Revolution is not necessarily the revolution of the new automatized machines. The real Industrial Revolution was the measurement of time for having this hectic activity in permanence. And in reality, with the modern urbanism, we have lost kairos and aion. And we have kept only chronos. And this is, in reality, our tragic situation for 7 years. And we need today to reconquer this relation for having a useful time. And the COVID-19 shown that this is possible to reconquer a useful time. During COVID-19, we have the possibility to play with our children, to cook, to have different social activities, etc. In reality, reinventing proximity is to transform my relationship between space and time for having a better quality of life, for having more available time, for developing a humanistic ecology, not based in punishment, but based in a positive contribution for offering more and more services, and to develop the otherness necessary for this social inclusion and for being. This is the concept embraced by the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, at the end of 2019. And this was the backbone of her electoral program for Paris. And of course, she won this election for transforming Paris in this way. I want just to finish for saying that the risk of the 50-minute city, the risk of 50-minute territory, the risk of developing this concept of multi-centralities is to maybe offer a new possibility for generating gentrification if we have this possibility for increasing the quality of life in several sectors based on a capitalistic measures, the incomes, the revenues. For that, I said to mayors around the world, or the local governors, we need to consider this strategic importance of the common good. The common good, the urban common good, is the key for fighting against gentrification. The common good, the urban common good, the roots we could find in the work of the Nobel Prize Eleanor Ostrom, 2009. She won the Nobel Prize by this contribution based on the governance by the commons. The common good is the most important element today for avoiding gentrification. In the city of Paris, Ms. Anne Hidalgo, for example, we have decided that the local commerce is the common good. And in this way, we have created a subsidiary company, 100% of the city of Paris, the commercial property, for managing the different locations in the city of Paris, for buying different locations, and to rent for installing local shops, artisans, bakeries, fisheries, bookstore, recycling points, Second Life, Third Life, small room for exhibition, etc., in all city. Because we could propose a rent below the price of the speculative real estate market. Without this measure, we will have the luxury things, the Chanel, etc., and this is not possible to have merely a bookstore. In a nutshell, this is the implementation of the 50-minute city, 30-minute territory, and happy proximity. Mix the uses within proximity, having a happy citizen for a happy life, to break the rhythm of the city, to develop the multi-purpose function. The rate, in the world, the urban world rate for using buildings is very, very low. 30 or 40% the time for using a building that existed today. It means that a building is closed between 60 or 70% of the useful time. Because one building, one function. This is the modern urbanism, monofunctionalist. We need to propose these multi-purpose functions for offering for each one of our square meters multiple uses. And for each one of new uses, we could deploy new imagination. I have enough time for explaining with the concrete examples, but for example, a disco, it is used only during 3 days from 10 p.m. until 3 a.m. We have decided to transform, for example, disco in the sport rooms in proximity. We could use this disco for another activity. A cafe is with less frequentation at the end of afternoon. We have fostered a civic association for using a cafe, for example, for the lesson of foreign languages. We have decided to use the stadium, the modern stadium Jean in Paris, and the level 0 was transformed in an incubator for a sportive business. We have decided to transform the great center of exhibitions of the city of Paris for hosting the incubator of sustainable tourism for the business. We have lot of examples. We have decided to open the schoolyards during the weekend because until now the schoolyards are closed during the weekend. We have decided to open for offering these public spaces for new different activities without a link with the school. The matrix of the 15-minute city, it's the intersections. In reality, we have the generators of intersections. Our enemy is the monofunction of a building. We need to increase these 3 indicators: my personal well-being with my family, my sociability with my neighbor and my work colleagues, and my otherness in the sustainable ecology. This is, in a nutshell, the totality of the high-quality societal life proposed by the 50-minute city. And this is the roadmap for the generic urban territories interested in to develop this concept. This is a roadmap during several years for transforming each one of our cities in a polycentered city. Reinventing a polycentric multipurpose vicinity, 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters. Each one of our meters we need to transform for propose. To break with the paradigm, with the modern urbanism, the constraint to mobility. We are totally obliged to have mobilities just for going from my home to my office, towards a chosen mobility. To work differently, to develop the corporate working, this is a decentralized project. We wanted to develop this new logic for accessibility to services, to improve the existing, to offer new services, and to limit the investments, because we have convinced that we could redeploy the investments for fostering these 3 ways: a new rhythm in the city, working differently. We need to develop the multipurpose functions, and with the participatory budget, we could foster citizens for be involved in the local projects. 35 minutes. I have several illustrations, but I said that 35 minutes is the time. It's okay? Huh? Okay. We have, just for finishing, two examples. This is our methodology to identify the local service, intermediate service, and the central services with this daily proximity, mutualized networking, centrality structure. Yeah. This is our methodology for modelizing a city, to explore the territory, to identify the different infrastructure services, to visualize and to propose the new packages. The new packages with the proximity, with the 6 essential functions, the intermediate ops, and the centrality for the local governance. Proximity based on this triple impacto, and in our methodology, we have a digital platform which allows the possibility for exploring the territory and to match with the profile with inhabitants for understanding needs of each one of citizen dwellers. For example, to identify family, children, students, border workers, young workers, couples, seniors, etc., and to propose with this matching with the 6 essential functions, to live, to work, to care, to enjoy, to supply, to organize, how could we identify different uses, services, and infrastructures? And to explore the territory, to identify the time saving, and to identify the naturally reduction of CO2 without constraint, only because we have the possibility to propose more and more services. This is a concrete example. Okay, I have a more and more concrete example, but I think this is enough for now. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. We have exactly 15 minutes for questions. So that's great. Please, gentlemen, sit here. You can take your seat.
Just to take
thank you for joining the discussion. It's important to have politics that listen to professionals and scientists. Now it's also time for your questions. So if you have some, you can raise your hand, and my colleague will bring you a microphone, and you can ask a question. I have some questions from our audience here. First is mine. You probably know Danish urbanist Michael Cowell-Anderson. He mentioned that 15-minute city or 30-minute city is something that is natural for us. It's something that it's something how we build our cities for centuries. So, do you agree that this is back to future? This is something that we are returning to our roots. We are redeveloping cities because we destroy them by cars or bad infrastructure.
I said that we need to reinventing cities for. Of course, find again our roots, because at the beginning of last century, we have different villages before the creation of big metropolises with this unhuman livability. But at the same time, in the 21st century, we have a very, very relevant difference. The existence of internet, the existence of digital technologies. In this last century, we don't have internet, we don't have digital technologies. And I said to Anders, I have two different colleagues, when we discussed with the idea to find again the old-fashioned lifestyle. In reality, without digital technologies, it is not possible to implement this new paradigm, because we have the possibility to propose the presential activities, but we need to use digital technologies for giving this possibility for choosing. And digital technologies is a very, very important ally. For example, the medical services. We need today to use digital technologies for diagnostic, for education, for culture. When we want to develop the local activities, we need the digital platform for the participatory budget. And we need to develop a grid city in reality, not isolated villages. The core of this concept is a city based on a livable network.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you're in contact with other mayors of Budapest and Bratislava. Did you discuss these concepts with them? What is their opinion? Are they against the radical changes or the opposite?
Well, unfortunately, we haven't get in the discussions with other mayors to these topics. We are mostly discussing, we were discussing COVID, we're discussing the Ukrainian situation, but I hope we will get soon to discussing these topics as well. Well, the point is that if you look at our city, the city is composed of several city districts. Some of them are actually of a size of a regional capital. If you look at Prague District 4, it's got over 100,000 inhabitants. And that means if we would not count Prague as total, if we would count each district separately, this means that Prague District 4 would be actually the fourth biggest city in Czech Republic. But if you look at those districts, you see that they do not actually work like a 15-minute network. Definitely not the peripherals, like for example the South City, that is the modernistic structure of the concrete residential buildings from 80s or 90s, let's say 70s, maybe even. So. And this is the point of the thing. So I believe we have a lot of potential. However, I'm thinking about the implementation of this concept into the city and basically to any city, because it must be quite complicated because the cities already exist there. So I'm thinking about how to implement this concept in a city like Prague, and that will be, I think, the real challenge.
Okay. Another question from our audience. It's about the risks that you mentioned at the end. Can the 15-minute city increase inequality and segregation of people cluster in neighborhoods based on their incomes more as they spend more time in them? Can I imagine that we can create a cluster of people in residential high-rise and people in beautiful city blocks that is absolutely different community, etc., etc. Is that the risk real? Is it happening in Paris?
Yes. I explained a few minutes ago that one of the risks is in fact to start a new gentrification process. For that, we are totally aware that we need to propose this concept of 15-minute city work based on the defense of the common good. The common good is very, very relevant for deploying in urban policy without gentrification. We have lot of examples in Paris. I said we have created the commercial property of the city of Paris for having local commerce in several cities. We have created 3 different companies, subsidiary of the city of Paris, for managing social housing, and more selected. But in each one of these roadmap, the mixity is compulsory. Social mixity and social functions. We need as well to rebalance the social activities to mix work with the residential areas, to propose medical services, to propose education. But the key element is local governance. In our case, this is the mayor Anne Hidalgo, totally committed in the defense of common good with the concrete implementation and the investments for that. But this is a real risk, and I said an example in this afternoon in London, for example, in Canary Wharf. This is a private real estate who said, this is my 50-minute city tower. This is not possible to have a tower just with several services in a tower and to say, my new 50-minute city tower. No, we need to develop a regulatory urban policy and not allow the private sector to manage.
Thank you very much. There is a question in first row. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Gabriela Ničková. Thank you for the great presentation. It was really inspiring. And I have a question regarding how to address urban sprawl, because I think it's similar for Paris, Prague, and especially, for example, in American cities, where you have municipalities, these residential suburbs without schools, medical facilities, and so on. And also the problem is that in these urban sprawl areas, like the city of Prague doesn't have its own local government. They have it's separate, and these residential suburbs have their own local governments. So it's difficult to influence it for the city of Prague. But of course, we are strongly affected by it because people from these suburbs commute every day by car to Prague to work here. They commute to bring children, to ride children to school, and most of them are car dependent, and it leads to increased traffic and environmental problems and so on.
Yes, you're absolutely right. In fact, we have a strong collaboration in North America with different cities. Toronto, for example, in San Francisco. And this is a reality. We need to be aware that a roadmap for transforming, for example, the urban sprawl in Los Angeles, this is a tremendous challenge, and I think that in several cases impossible by the mental structure of people that have decided to live in this area. In Paris, we have the same problem with the suburbs, and we have decided to implement the polycentric metropolises for offering local services and to reduce and to limit the long commute. And with the transformations, with the COVID-19, we have the possibility to start to reduce, but we don't have enough time for developing this aspect. But we need, in fact, to create in the metropolitan scale ambitious roadmap for reducing. In this case, we said the 30-minute metropolises for creating the new polarities, the new centralities. That, you're right, it is very, very difficult to explain to people that live in suburbs to change our lifestyle. We need the compact cities, but this is in opposition with this lifestyle.
Thank you. Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Just a short comment to Gabriela, and it can be very nice to have some kind of workshop with you and maybe your or with sort of colleagues, because there is a lot of questions which should be discussed. For example, if Gabriela, we don't have in Prague almost any urban sprawl in city of the Prague, yeah? And also the Paris was under control of colleague Hidalgo. It's a relatively small city. It's 105 square meters, so it's 2.2 million people. It's almost same dimension like preservation area of the Prague of heritage. So there is a lot of differences, and the management of the Paris in hands of the colleague Hidalgo, it's very concentrated. There are the districts with almost without any power inside of this 2.2 million. So it's completely different organization than city of Prague, which is pretty complicated. And also your city has a very huge density. It's something like 210 inhabitants per square kilometers. We have 54 inhabitants per square meter. So it's very hard to build the same principle. But I agree completely with all ideas, but we are facing a little bit different structure of the city, And I think it can be nice workshop about the density, proper density of the city, which can create the city of the short distances. I would appreciate some kind of cooperation between the EU and city of Prague. It could be nice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a question in the third row. Yes, mister, you can ask.
Hello, Professor Moreno. Thank you. Very, very interesting chat. I've got a question, because you talked about the uncomfortable long commutes. And have we not seen a change in that following COVID and the number of people working online over the last 2 years? Now, the interesting thing is you look at some of the statistics in terms of pollution in big cities, and it came down during COVID because people were working from home. And I know you want to bring about a change, and you're saying, yes, it's the mayors of the city, but it's not really, it's the companies, because companies now are putting pressure on people to come back to work, despite they show that they have increased productivity working from home. So do you need to put pressure on companies to actually change the way they approach bringing their employees to work?
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic for discussing. We have been working with the International Workplace, the international organization for the corporate work. And we consider that the new trend for the next years is in reality today irreversible for people between 20 until 40 years old. They in reality have decided to change. And this is today one of the reasons for reducing the frequentations of the centralized building for working. The rate in Paris today is less than 20%. The west sector, the district of La Défense is 1 million of square meters for 200,000 workers daily. And today we have frequentations less than 16%. And today the question is how could we transform these square meters for developing other activities? At the same time, we have been observing the emergence of the new business model, in particular in the sector of real estate, because this is the concept of corporate working, with the new decentralized locations for hosting workers and the possibility for working several hours, or 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, in my proximity with an algorithm, with the possibility for choosing my place for working. And I don't really need for going to my centralized working, that this is totally necessary. I think it's very, very interesting, the process of transformation of work style.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor?
Well, I have to say that, of course, during the COVID crisis, we have learned a lot about the online work. I think a lot of things that we never imagined that could be done online is now being done online. However, I had somewhat bigger expectations regarding the things that will stay here after the COVID will last over. And for example, and I have to say it's not just about the companies. It's easy to blame the companies. However, it's not just about the companies, it's also about the people. Because, for example, if I look at our situation at the City Hall, we had started quite soon with the online city council meetings. It was shortly after the fact when one of our colleagues spent like 7 hours with us on the city council meeting.
Just next to me.
Yeah, he was next to him and next to me. And this situation somewhat changed, forced to change our mind, and we started with online council meetings. However, I have to say that among our 11 colleagues in the city council, there are certain persons who need to meet in person, hug and kiss, and they are still demanding and asking, are we going to meet in person? I want to see you directly, and so on. And I do not have the heart to tell them never. We're going to be only online from now on. And so this is the problem. It's not just about the companies who do not allow it. It's about the fact that people need to, in fact, meet for some time. So although I have somewhat bigger expectations about complete change of the transport in the city due to the COVID crisis and the fact that COVID taught us to work online much more, actually, it's not what I expected, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. Maybe last question.
Professor Moreno, thank you for your great presentation. I, of course, love your theory and everything. But the really interesting thing for me is that you, as a scientist, as the man of knowledge, was somehow able to connect with the holder of the power, with Mayor Hidalgo, and you apparently inspired her to do really swift and radical changes that are, in fact, unimaginable in other cities. So I'd like to ask you how it is possible. What do you think are the factors that allowed her and you to do those changes in Paris?
Yes, this is a good comment and question. In fact, I am a scientist. This is my job, to imagine, to anticipate, to propose the new ways. I'm not a candidate for political positions. And of course, I support the mayor of Paris. He's a good friend. But my role with the mayor of Paris is the scientist advisor. In my team at Sorbonne, our role is to support the new visions and at the same time to give the new ideas for implementing, for transforming. Even if we have only 10% of our ideas or 5%, we are very happy when we could observe this concrete transformation. And this is the case, not only in Paris, because in reality, we have started in Paris with Anne Hidalgo at the end of 2019, but this concept was embraced by several other mayors in France, in different size of cities, the small cities, middle cities, and of course Paris, and after around the world. And in reality, Anne Hidalgo, for just a short response, he embraced in 2018 the concept. This is the backbone for the electoral campaign in 2020. We have just after the COVID during 1 year. It's very, very hard. In June 2021, Anne Hidalgo presented and voted the roadmap for 6 years, the transformation of the city of Paris. The first implementation is not visible, but the first implementation is the transformation of the local governance of the city of Paris. For the first time in the history of the city of Paris, the local governance has totally transformed because we have one mayor, Anne Hidalgo, and 17 local mayors, with the different deputy mayors in charge of different topics. And we have a very powerful administration, 70,000 people, employees of the city of Paris, 70,000 people. We needed to transform radically the local governance for having this matrix of the 6 functions, of the 3 indicators based on territory. This is a tremendous transformation, the more radical transformation in the city of Paris since the creation of the city of Paris. This is not visible because this is the internal organization. But without this internal transformation, it's not possible to implement this program. This is in June 2021. Yeah, exactly. exactly. More competencies in the local activities, to crisscross the different services, to give to General Secretary the implementation of the roadmap of the 50-minute city, to develop for example, new proximity services, to develop the local policy, for example, the local police, to implement the new clean process, etc. It's very, very complex. And in December 2021, we have implemented the new pact, the proximity pact. The proximity pact, this is the package of the concrete measures for transforming Paris in the different districts, in different areas, in different sectors. And this is today very, very, very this is concrete. But the roadmap, this is a roadmap for several years in the condition of the COVID. To be honest, before the COVID, we had an ambitious roadmap just after winning the elections. But we won the elections in June 2020 instead of in March 2020 because we had a long delay before we have a lockdown. And just after lockdown, the economical conditions, the mental condition of the Parisians were very, very difficult, and we need to reach December for implementing our package.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Last reaction from Prague's point of view, gentlemen.
I love your ideas. Just to answer also to colleague to understand our situation in Prague. Mm-hmm. Paris, as I said, it's 105 kilometers, 2.2 million people, yeah, and 70 neighborhoods. And we have 496 square kilometers, 57 neighborhoods, and 1.5 million. Mm. And the last comment, when I spoke about the density, I am not sure if I didn't say mistake. Density was about the hectares, so I don't know if I didn't say kilometers. I just want to correct it. Mm. In Paris, its density is something like 210. If you compare whole city, which is just lined by periphery.
We have a small city, 100 square kilometers.
And in Prague, it's like 54 or 56, depending how do you calculate.
Half.
Well, maybe
it will work now.
Yeah, maybe I would like to mention just one thing about the competencies. The problem of transforming the city from the state A to state B is generally a problem in our country because of the lack of the competencies on the city level. Or the municipality level in general. For example, the thing with this tempo 30, the speed of 30 kilometers per hour in Paris, recently implemented thing. Okay, well, I was asked by media about this, about this, if we should implement this thing in Prague. And I said, well, that's a very interesting question, but actually the mayor or the City Hall of Great Prague has no such competencies. Because the point is that, for example, this is upon the decision of the not actually the city politicians, but it's on the decision of the clerks of the governmental clerks actually being seated on the district city halls. So this is a model of governance that makes extremely complicated to make basically any change of the system. That's the first thing. And second thing is that actually Mayor Hidalgo is directly elected, I believe. We've got indirectly. Okay, I wanted to say that sometimes it is perceived as the biggest problem, the direct versus indirect election of the mayor. But in fact, I believe that it's not the real problem. The real problem is actually the lack of competencies on the city level, specifically in Czech Republic.
I agree totally. In Paris, it's the same situation because we We live in a centralized Jacobin country. And for example, if we wanted to limit the traffic because we have the pollution peak in the ground axis, this is not possible for the mayor to decide to limit the reduction. It's the government. Just for 300 meters, we don't have with more vehicles because this is the government which should decide. The competencies is a real problem. This is one of the reasons of the success of 50-minute city, because at the same time, we wanted to implement a massive decentralization in our country based on cities and territories. Yeah.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Carlos Moreno.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.